Hello! It's been a while since I've done one of these, and for whatever reason I couldn't get the camera to work on the computer, so I'm doing it from the phone. So sorry for vertical format, sorry for flipped video. Um, I can sort of understand why that's the norm, but it annoys me because I often have text on my shirt or on the wall behind me that I'd rather be readable. So, this is giving me a lot of unnecessary headroom here. There we go. It's a little precariously set on top of a glass, so it may go tumbling randomly in a few seconds. Um, what have I been up to? How are things going? Well, it's still a weird time. I still have moments of thinking this is my imagination, thinking that this is a dream, thinking that there's some confusion, and that I just need to kind of shake myself and realize that it's not real, but it is real. So I'm still having that, and we're at what, 6, 7, 2 months in. Um, so that's still going on. I'm adapting. I'm finding my coping mechanisms. Um, I can't seem to keep a coping mechanism for more than a few weeks before I start to hate it. My walking is starting to become a chore as opposed to an escape. I'm hoping that's temporary because the past couple of days it's been tough to get out of the house. And I know that in general I need that exercise. Um, I don't know. I have my ups and my downs. Today was a down. Um, I've been kind of watching how people are doing, and I'm glad that people seem to be adapting. I have mostly stopped looking at Facebook feed because I'm eventually going to see someone say something stupid, and um, I just unfollow indiscriminately. If it's stupid enough, I will block. But I'm afraid one day I'm just going to have to argue, and that won't do well for anyone. Oh well. So at this time, social isolating. I've got a good quality mask. Within the next month, some things are going to start getting back to, no, not normal. Not normal at all. But going to start moving toward the new normal. Um, I'm still working at Dreamscapes. I'm doing mostly work from home. And we are planning to open on June 1st with hugely modified format and regulations, and that'll be interesting. And Fear Factory has just announced that it's going to try its halfway to Halloween the last weekend of May. Hugely changed procedures. And I find increasingly my time is being used in things that didn't exist until recently. Zoom meetings out the wazoo. The past 2 days I've had, not today, but the previous 2 days I had five Zoom meetings each. Today I just had two. I'm doing sort of a stage managing performances over Zoom, which is a new thing. Zoom, before all this, was used for business meetings only, and now it's used for social gatherings and the performing arts. And it's not perfectly designed for that. And so it is my job in these instances to do my best behind the scenes to adapt it for the performing arts, mostly audience managing. And I did my Easter show last month, and that's led to some gigs coming up of doing other kinds of shows in the same way, switching with the vMix switcher, switching live feeds. So that's interesting. I'm becoming slowly an expert in things that did not exist. And the other thing is, with Fear Factory as the head trainer, or the supervisor with training specialization, I think is technically my job title. I now have to invent how to train our actors to be able to do a good show while maintaining social distancing, while wearing masks that cover their mouths, while staying 6 feet away, when all the training up till now has been about getting into personal space. My voice training has to be specialized for being understandable through fabric. I have some advanced techniques for things like not technically throwing your voice, but kind of. I mean, throwing your voice isn't a real thing like in the cartoons, but you can do things that will carry your voice further than expected, and that will help making the noise through the cloth. There are ways to have. See, this is actually forcing me to develop techniques for doing some of the harder things in performance. Doing this kind of fancy vocal technique is a little bit hard to teach, and it's something that I've mostly left untaught, except for people who express specific interest. So now it's got to become the norm. It's got to become the baseline. Otherwise, I guess we're gonna go boom, and that doesn't work. The other thing is like presence, like being bigger than you are, being larger than you are, which is going to translate into seeming closer than you are. So we're going to stay 6 feet away, and I'm actually going to have a 6-foot pole, and I'm going to wander around and like get people so that they have mentally that, so that they can mentally map that in, so it becomes second nature. This is your boundaries. And in the room you're in, if your room is only 7 feet wide, you got to stay up against the wall, right? But you can still do the show, and you can still do a good quality show. You can still do a magic show. You can still do a variety show. You can still do a haunt show. And slowly I'm developing specialized expertise in these weird things that did not exist just a few weeks ago. And will they still exist in a few more weeks? I think so. I do. I think that even when we're opened up all the way, I think that there will be repercussions that stick with us. And I think that the stuff that people are inventing to get by, some of that's going to stay. My friends who are burlesque performers are doing online shows and killing it. That the online show is, it's going to stay. It's still going to be a thing. It's going to give people access to performances they never would have been. If you're, because before now, if you want to see a performance, you've either got to be local or it's got to be broadcast on cable TV or something. But now broadcasting on internet through Zoom or live feeds, or Vimeo or OnlyFans. You've got many more options you can share with the world. Our performing arts are slowly going grassroots global. And I think this is a wonderful thing. It's in response to a terrible thing, but at least locally, the performing arts community, culture, and economy has always been not robust. And this hurts. The current situation hurts that. Um, and if you're someone who can't adapt, you're going to have to give up. And uh, honestly, no blame if you do. But there are businesses that are closing. There are performers who are quitting. There are there are things that are there are people who are giving up, and there are people who are hiding their heads in the sand, waiting for it to all go away. And both of those kinds of people are going to be hurting. If you give up if you gotta. Hide out if you've got the luxury, if you've got the luxury to not create and not earn for months. Fine. If you're an employer and you do that, and your employees all have to fail, that's sucky, and you should consider the ethics of doing that. But if you can, adapt. There's no way to adapt without it hurting somewhat. But you've got to adapt or give up. Hiding out is not going to be an option forever. There are, like I say, I've been doing magic shows. There are magicians who are hiding out. There are magicians who are just, they're not doing anything. They're just waiting for it to all go away. And they're unable to be convinced that there's a new way now. These online shows are successful. They're new. They're grassroots. They're not Vegas successful. But if you don't have to live in Vegas, you don't need Vegas money. The burlesque shows, the variety shows, they're successful in their way. For me, Gonza Rising is my big variety show, and our one virtual show made. It's really hard to say how much money it made, because the performers were each tipped individually on their Venmo and PayPal, and I did not require reporting from my performers. But I know I got more tips than I ever get at a show. And all of that went to St. Josephine's Home for the Unloved Arts, which itself has got to be adapting to this new way of things. We've got to be mentoring performers who need help moving into this new world. That's going to be a service we provide, if only because that's now something I do. That's something I can do. That's something I'm still working out. I'm still developing. I'm still learning techniques. I'm still learning software and technology. I'm still arguing with myself about whether it's worthwhile to get a Zoom Pro account. I just wish it were a one-time purchase and not a subscription service. But that's me all over. We've got to adapt. If you have the luxury to hide out and wait it out, you might be okay. But if you're in the creative realm, you probably don't have that luxury. Very few creatives have much in the way of a savings account or a rainy day fund. So, hell, most of us don't have insurance. Most of us have second and third jobs, mind you, which may or may not offer insurance. We did St. Josephine's did a survey of local performers in the unloved arts, to get demographic figures, gender and economic status and what your specific needs and wants were. And we skew very queer. We skew very poor. And for Utah, we skew very ethnically diverse as well. Um, and these typically and statistically are not people who have a large amount of savings. They're gonna have to. I mean, I'm sure you've already had to face the question. For now, do I have to give up what I'm doing and do something um, reliable to survive? And of course, nothing's reliable. I remember it seems like very recently when the kind of go-to was, well, if all else fails, you can go to McDonald's. Um, McDonald's isn't reliable anymore. It's, I mean, for one, you can't make a living wage there. When I worked at McDonald's, managers were on food stamps, and if the managers were on food stamps, then the regular staff were not doing better. Um, in fact, a lot of us were going for extra shifts, not just for the income, but so that we could eat those days. And now most businesses have to have far fewer staff. Uh, I mean, the entertainment industry that I'm part of, everything is going to be the staff has to be more spread out. Um, Restaurants aren't going to have open dining room. Well, maybe they have open dining rooms, but they can't take as many customers as a time, which means they can't afford as many wait staff, which means they can't afford probably as many chefs. Um, it means that a lot of entertainment and service industry are going to be cutting way back, which means a lot of people are out of work. A huge amount of people are out of work. But by all means, let's bail out the corporations, not the people who work for them. Not bitter. Um, but yeah, I mean, if this talk has a message to it, it's you've got to adapt and you've got to reach out for help if you need to. I have friends who are hurting and have a hard time reaching out for help. And when they do reach out for help, those of us they reach out to don't always know how to help. Um, but it's better to have a few people looking out for you, even if that's all you got. Yeah. And if you are in the creative world, if you are a performing artist, if you are an employer, booker, producer of the performing arts, you must embrace the new way. We're still inventing it. We are still inventing it. I'm still not sure what the next Gonza Rising is going to be like. I imagine by the way, we're not going to have a May show. I made the executive decision to hold off until June because honestly, the Easter show was so much work. I didn't want to have another show until I knew more. And hopefully by the second Sunday in June, we'll know more. And I have a strong feeling we're going to go to hybrid shows now, online and in person. I don't know how that'll work, but I think that's the direction we're going to be going. It'll be a while before we can have a large audience, which is fair because Gonzo Rising generally has fewer than 20 people in the audience anyway. But we had well more than that for the virtual show. Way more than that. Part of that is people have a lot of spare time on their hands. Part of that is people could watch the show at work. They could watch the show when they don't live in town. They could watch the show later. So if we can figure out some way to do a hybrid show, I think that's the direction to go. Um, Other things like the haunted house can't really do a virtual show. I mean, we could if we absolutely had to, but it's the experience of the thing, the in-person experience of the thing. We're going to have to cut way back on how many guests we can have in at a time. We're going to have to cut way back on staff. Um, and we're going to have to really change our strategies. We're going to have to really change how we perform. And this is on top of, or in addition to, all the various safety things, masks and sanitizing stations and whatnot. And the haunt and the art installation are very similar, and they've got very similar uh, things they're putting in place. Um, and I think that a lot of this is going to become the new standard, at least for a while, and possibly for a long while. And you know what? If everybody starts being this careful, we might knock out the flu one day. Because COVID-19 isn't the only thing that spreads by air and contact. Um, but this is the new way. And it has the potential. I don't want to be Pollyanna here. I don't want to be, you've got to be optimistic or you're losing. But there are possibilities that are now available. There are things that our society has done that we thought were impossible. Everybody schooling from home? It's not great. But if you 3 months ago you'd said, hey, is this possible? They would say no. We're feeding people in enormous amounts. Where our healthcare workers are so overworked, and my God, you can call them heroes, but also vote for them to get better paid and vote for them to get better taken care of. And our grocery workers and everyone should, any essential worker should be making a living wage. I mean, I think everyone should have a living wage. But if there's someone who has to work for society to exist, there is absolutely no ethical justification for them not being able to make enough money to survive on without having to have multiple jobs, without being on food stamps. Having a full-time job and still qualifying for food stamps means something is wrong with your system. That needs to stop. And it's probably in this country not going to happen from the top down, so it's going to happen from the bottom up. And I know living in Utah, I'm probably not going to see the changes that are going to start sweeping the country. Utah's not going to be the first to do progressive stuff. It will, like legalizing cannabis is Utah's going to be one of the last ones. That sort of thing. Utah's not going to be in the forefront of change. It's just not. It never is. That's just not what Utah's about. But culture has gotten more global. I think since we're doing more stuff online, we now are more comfortable talking to people in other countries. We're more comfortable dealing with global communication. We're learning a lot about what we don't know. Zoom is probably making a lot of money right now, and they were probably kind of a niche market up until very recently. There will be other platforms like Zoom. I mean, there are other platforms like Zoom, but Zoom is the one that's getting kind of the most airtime. But if someone does a Zoom-like platform that's better suited for performances, let me know. Because it will do, but it's not great. It's not perfect. It's either a meeting style where everybody kind of gets equal bandwidth, or it's presenter style uh, but it it's not ideal for a lot of kinds of performance. Um, but who knows? Maybe OnlyFans or Pornhub will be the new model for how to do virtual performance. I don't know. It could come from anywhere. Uh, but and maybe Zoom will come out with Zoom Entertainment. They've got a few different kinds. Um, Maybe there's band something. There are platforms designed for virtual parties and dance parties and that sort of thing, and maybe that's going to be the way to go. For now, Zoom is the big name, um, and if you are trying to hold a business without adapting, you're in denial. You've got to try, and if you can't imagine your way out of it, there are people you can ask. There are people who will help you invent some way. Restaurants are adapting and are now have been doing curbside service. Um, every other industry is adapting. The entertainment industry cannot afford to be hidebound. It cannot afford to be dinosaurs. And a lot of the entertainment industry is not very adaptable. So we're going to see some shifting of things. Possibly the big studios are going to lose some ground. Possibly the streaming services are going to start replacing some of the big studio uh, releases. I don't know. Maybe. But grassroots performance is absolutely going to start taking off. Um, and we need to get our act together before someone comes in and decides that somehow they have to monetize it, and not for the performers, right? Someone right now is trying to figure out a way to make money off my show. Not me specifically, but these performances. Someone is trying to figure out a way to make more money off other people's work. This is a new thing. This is a new medium. This is a new industry. Just a few weeks old. We've got to get our act together so that we can defend ourselves from um, hyper commercialization, which is what happens to every other medium. We need to get there. We need to have. I don't know what we need to have, but we need to start the conversation. Okay, that's it.